Hi and welcome to the Digital Accessibility Podcast with me, your host, Joe James. Throughout this series, I will be interviewing professionals who work within the space to share their expertise, journeys and general thoughts on the key issues facing the industry today. My aim is to provide an in-depth look into the world of digital accessibility and the impact it has on the lives of anyone who interacts with digital technology. Our goal is to bridge the skills gap in the current market and inspire others to join the movement towards a more accessible digital world. So whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting out, I hope that this platform will provide you with valuable insights and practical advice from experts and advocates in this extremely important community. Today, on this episode of the Digital Accessibility Podcast, I'm absolutely honoured to be joined by Paul Van Workum, co-owner and accessibility advisor of Abra. Abra builds software and provides advice to people to help make digital accessibility understandable. Paul is also one of the managers of the Appt Foundation, which we'll hear more about later, I hope. He's been working within the accessibility field for the last 4 years, and prior to that has been an entrepreneur in the technology development space for over 10 years. He's making a huge and truly positive impact on the European web and mobile accessibility market and is hoping to increase this impact globally. I hope that introduction's accurate, Paul, but forgive me if I've missed anything at all.
Yes, sounds good. So I don't have to introduce myself anymore.
Yeah, well, I was going to say if there is anything I've missed, then fire away. But I guess my first official question would be about your background or how you first came across accessibility.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Yeah. First, thanks for having me on this podcast. Yeah, it's nice that you invited me. And I think it's really cool to share our story that we have and about the cool projects that we are doing. And to realize our goals to make all apps accessible. First we did it in the Netherlands, but like more and more we're like moving abroad. So this is really cool podcast to share the story that we've been going through. Yeah, my name is Paul Van Workum. I see myself as an entrepreneur. Like I'm living in the Netherlands, and I'm a dad of 3. And in the last 12 years, I've been developing myself. Created a few companies, did some really interesting projects, I can say. And basically it started with the apps. I started like 7 years ago. Together with my wife, we were going to build apps. We have a team in Ukraine with that does the development, and we did the project management.
Amazing.
And basically, I got introduced to someone, and that was the starting point. But the starting point of in the accessibility world.
Right.
But maybe I think we come to that later, right?
Yeah, we will. I'm sure we will. Hopefully, but that's brilliant. So, like you said, you've been in that sort of technological space, development space for quite some time now, which is excellent. So you've probably seen things from both ends. And I suppose, I mean, so for me, digital accessibility is something that I stumbled upon because of my work as a recruitment consultant, working with companies. That was the request. So they asked for people with experience in that space. However, I, my impression is that accessibility is something that can be stumbled upon by able-bodied people, because I feel that unless you have your personal experience in needing assistive technology or some assistance with digital accessibility, it's kind of just something that's there that's not really spoken about. But I don't know, is that your experience? Is it something that's stumbled upon or otherwise?
Yeah, for me, like I was developing apps, of course, and for me, meeting Jan-Jaap de Groot was a starting point. Like he was it was in 2020, just before COVID, and he's a real expert in actually building those apps for people at that time, mainly people that are blind.
Right.
So that the screen reader is working, and that experience is now way more broad. But in the beginning, it was like focused on screen reader users. And basically, Anja told me that there would be some legislation. And so I told him like, oh, that's interesting. And like entrepreneurial as I am, I asked him like, okay, just send me some information and we will look at it. And yeah, I'll check it out. And yeah, it's always interesting to get some new insights. But basically, he told that yeah, there was no information available. So legislation for all governments and all commercial companies, but there's no information and no solutions. And so we knew that there was going to be quite a big need, but there was still no solution. And yeah, basically at that time, just before COVID, we started it as basically a hobby project, like writing down articles, like investigating, and basically starting our knowledge platform at that time. And yeah, that hobby project became a little bit bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And yeah, basically like the platform now expanded to yeah, having a lot of information about yeah, the different kind of assistive technologies and how many people are using those, about the standards and how to interpret them, but also on how to fix errors. We have about 300 code examples at the moment. So yeah, if you want to make an app accessible, just check app.org, and it's 100% for free. And that's the way we want to yeah to work, like share a lot of things for free. And there's always companies that will hire us to do let's say paid advice or something like that. Sure. But yeah, basically in the beginning it was like kind of a business opportunity for me. So like big opportunity, like if the bigger companies, the bigger app builders need something and they don't know how, then of course it's a business opportunity. But yeah, we try to make it like that we have also that we have a lot of impact as well. So we want to create win-win situations, so for the user, for the companies, and also for ourselves, so that we can also continue the things that we're doing. But yeah, what I see is that we created a reporting app, and we got like around 400 reports from real users, and I was the one following up those reports to the companies.
Right. Yeah.
So meeting all those people and seeing their problems, that you can't put the heating higher because your app is not working, or that you have a washing machine and it has an update and then you can't control it anymore. Like really, like things that we are not able to understand, but basically really important things that like it influenced their ability to communicate, to communicate with their government, to like really important things that are not working, and not working because they are not skilled, but not working because it's not working. So that there's a door that is closed, and it's not closed because the user did something wrong, but because the app builder did something wrong. And that's like for the business opportunity is interesting, but I really feel that we have a big responsibility now as well, and to make the choices that we can make the apps more accessible. So it's really it became our mission really to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, like you mentioned there, from the reports that you were getting through the reporting tool that you'd created, some of those things you probably wouldn't have thought of in your own personal life, because I think it's technology affects people in so many different ways. But that's fascinating and admirable that you decided to, do something about it. But I like that you've mentioned it was a business opportunity, and that's the world we live in, right? We're looking to we have to have a return on investment. We have to be able to do things that we can make, sustainable. But it's now become more of a mission, or feel like it's a personal duty to, make things accessible.
But what we saw is that in the beginning we had an hourly rate internally that was too low, and we were able to do all those big projects ourselves, but we were not able to scale up because like if we would hire other people, it was not no one wanted to work for the same tariff, and we were building our company. So for us it was like building the reporting app, building the platform, building like all. Yeah, we did quite some like paid blogs with subsidies from and yeah, like some funds like the Bartimeus funds and SCDN funds in the Netherlands, and also the government from the Netherlands really helped us. For example, those code examples were paid by the Dutch government.
Wow.
So they paid us and we worked for a low tariff, but in the end, we have 300 code examples that we offer for free. But of course, this is for the users great, for app building companies it's great, for the government it's great. But we created those companies, so if there's questions, like who will be asked? Like,
Yeah.
So it's also for us in the end good. But I think the approach that we have is that we want to have impact, and if you have impact, then the business opportunity comes from that, and it's not the other way around.
No, absolutely, and I completely agree with that. I think that's it's admirable. I think that's how more things should be in the world. But excellent, and that's really great. And like you said, there wasn't any. You identified the issue of there not being really any documentation or any advice really out there or
Yeah,
examples. So it's great that you've put that in place, but I feel that as with every technical field, there's somewhat of a skills shortage. So you met Jan Yap, and he's been able to help you with the development side of things. And my job as a recruiter is to help find more people with those types of skills for other companies. So
yeah.
how do you have an idea, or do you have any advice on how we might be able to keep up with that demand? I know that you've created a very good solution there with training and advice.
Yeah.
But do you have any advice on how to attract that kind of talent or training in that space?
I can share some numbers.
Yeah,
Uh,
great.
Accessibility when implemented well, so that if you have like the structure there to like processes and knowledge, and then to make your app accessible, it costs around 10 to 15% extra.
Wow. Okay.
If you don't have those processes in place and you have to start from scratch, it will cost you even more. uh, but basically, that means that if you have a development team of 100 developers, like for example in the Netherlands, the bigger banks and the media companies and insurance companies, they have that kind of teams. You need around 15 extra people
Mm.
to be able, basically to be able to develop the same functionality, but then in an accessible way, if implemented well. And most companies don't have that in place yet.
Mm.
So this is really a big challenge. It's not possible, basically, that we have 15% extra developers. I don't know how it is in the rest of the world, but in the Netherlands, it's like already a big shortage now without the need of developing in an accessible way. But what we try to do there is like we want to make accessibility like easier and more fun. So if you have to fix an issue and you can look at appt.org and you can find it right away, then of course it helps with lowering the amount. And if that happens, it of course, if more companies and more developers can easily find solutions and easily find the knowledge, then more steps are made in accessibility work. But there's a shortage, so it's always a balance, and it's not possible to do everything. So if you make it easier to do it, then that's where you can have a big impact. And basically we had the platform app.org, and I think it's interesting platform, but still, like we were giving a lot of trainings to companies. So we give the kind of kickoff training. It's like to learn the basics. It's normally 2 hours, and I think we gave it for a few thousand people already, and it's nice. But we thought like, okay, what if we can record that? And in the end, it turned out that if you record it, like I don't give that many examples, so it can be within half an hour. So if you now go to academy.abra.nl, you can find the free training of half an hour. I think you followed it yesterday.
I have. Yeah.
Yesterday. So it just recently launched, and if you follow it after half an hour, you know the basics, And you know also where to find the other stuff you need on appt.org if you want to explore more. And that's, I think, that kind of things. I believe that a lot of developers will get the awareness on how important this is, but also find the tools and the information they need to be able to do it themselves. So that's as a company that gives advice to companies how to do this. Maybe not smart, but what we see is that in the Netherlands, at least, because we do those things, that also the bigger banks and insurance companies and media companies, that like for a relatively small company, we have quite a market gap because we're really efficient, because we know we created the content, so we know where it is, and I only have to send you to the right URL, and then you know how to fix things, or how to to find the knowledge that you need. And that's, I think, what we want to achieve, that we make the accessibility easier and a bit more fun.
Yeah, amazing. And you're making digital accessibility more accessible, or the implementation of accessibility accessible to more people.
I always tell the story about, like, we have we had a book. We developed it. It's a we will now this coming months develop it, translate it to English, and also print it again. But what we always say is that, like, on Friday afternoon at 3:00, if you then think like, okay, let's have 2 hours of accessibility. If you then go to the WCAG guidelines, then 5 minutes later, you're drinking beer and like celebrating the weekend, instead of like reading the book and to get the first insight. Because WCAG is really, really great to go to the last 10%. But to make a first step, it's really elaborate, really complicated, and we try to make it a bit more easier. And sometimes it's what we do is not in the book. It's a simplification, meaning that you lose context, and that indeed it's not like it could give that you oversimplify. But the problem with accessibility is that developers don't know where to start. And if you solve that, in the next steps, it will become better.
Absolutely. And I completely agree. I feel that it's one of those things that it's how on earth can you, if it's something you've not come across before, or you've not really discussed, and you have, maybe someone's reported an accessibility issue with an application or a website, and the only documentation you have is this extremely verbose, elaborate documentation called WCAG. And of course it's all numbered, and if you know what you're looking for, you can find solutions. But if you don't know what you're looking for, then you'd be just as lost. But that's great, and it brings me on to my next question as well, because I've discussed previously with a lot of people about the difference between the documentation that's available for web or website accessibility and mobile application accessibility. Because WCAG, you've got sort of the ISOs or the Equality Acts and things that primarily focus on website or web accessibility. But there isn't really much in the UK market, or I believe in the global market, that has really sort of drilled down into the mobile side of things, so applications. And I believe that's what yourself, Abra, and Appt have sort of done. But maybe you can share some more info on that side of things.
Yes, the governments, and also I think in future the commercial companies look at the EN standard, at least in Europe, and in the EU EN standard, it's referred to the WCAG guidelines, and it's the best we have now, and it's not ideal because some interpretation is not. It's an app. It's a different kind of thing, but it's the best we have, and you can interpret it quite well. And also, if you follow the guidelines, and you have to be able to perceive things, you have to be able to operate things, and you have to be able to understand things, and then you have certain like criteria where you look at, and if you read that and you think, okay, we have users that are using this app, and we have kind of a guideline saying you should be able to see, like to perceive everything, then for deaf people, audio is quite challenging. So there should be an alternative for visually impaired. Like if you're blind, you need to have the screen reader read everything for you. So if you see something that is important, it should be read. It's not that complicated, but you should. There's a lot of people, different kind of people with different kind of. I don't see. I always want to avoid saying disabled people or people with a disability. I always say I want to say people dependent on their screen reader, and people dependent on keyboard, or people dependent on larger font size. By doing that, basically, if you implement the larger font size and the screen reader and that it works, then those people don't have a disability because they can fully participate. And that's I think that the guideline is not ideal, but if you have, the goal is that users can participate. Also from the guideline, the goal is that there's some kind of black and white checklist. Say, okay, if I do this, then users can participate equally. And that, I think it's WCAG is a great first step. But what I see, and we have I followed up 400 of those reports. It's quite a cool reporting app we created, because basically we had a form on our site where you can just put some information, and then I got an email stating like a user has an issue somewhere. I was always asking them which app, or what kind of hardware and what kind of software are you using, and then before I knew the issue, there was 8 emails already further, and really challenging. So what we did is we created an app. You can just make a profile really easily, I think 4 or 5 steps. Then you make a new report, and at the time you make the report, you just type something like, I was going to our news app, and in the tabs in the bottom, they don't have labels, so it's for me hard to navigate. Okay, great. But then for a developer, it's quite complicated, because I can see those tabs. What's wrong with it? Screen reader, I don't know what it is. What are you talking about? So there's a lot of problems that users don't understand the developer, and the developer don't understand users. And what we try to do is that if the user presses send, we ask, basically the app reads out which hardware, which software, which if is he using dark mode, is he using the screen reader, what font sizes is he using. So we get those information, including the text feedback. And then we ask the user, hey, I know you're using the screen reader, but we have really cool instruction video, and you can make a screen recording of you navigating to that tab bar. And by showing the video, and the tab bar states, in the news app, stating tab 1, tab 2, tab 3, tab 4. So yes, hey guy, I'm blind. It's read out, but it doesn't have a label, so I'm not able to understand it. And then we say, okay, great. We add our solution. I say, okay, labels to tabs. That's app.ly/4.1.2. So also a solution. And then you have a report that is done. One issue, you can fix it. So that's something that we do in our foundation. So we have an Appt foundation. It's the free knowledge and the reporting app. But also on our business side, it's called Abra. We have the academy. It's also for free, but basically that's we want to make some more iOS and Android developer trainings, and that will be paid. In order to have also that we can maintain all those knowledge. But the cool thing is, if you have one report that you can follow up really good. If I ask a user to go to a certain app and ask 14 questions, and I ask maybe 5 groups of people depending on a keyboard or screen reader, or then I have 15 people, 15 reports. It's like 200 something like tickets with
Yeah.
videos, and then you have a really extensive user research. And we did a few of those, and yeah, it's that input. It's for companies that are already, let's say, not, yeah, almost comply to the WCAG guidelines, and then you still see that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit basically on improving the app. And it has nothing to do with WCAG. It has to do something with user experience. So it's
Right.
like it has certain steps in that as well.
And are you sort of using the WCAG guidelines as a as a guideline, and then mirroring that to what the similar sort of solution may be in an iOS or an Android application? Um, are you using that as the foundation, or is it completely in an entirely different?
Now the WCAG guideline it's not dependent on technology, so
Mhm.
you can interpret it quite well for apps. So yeah, the what I see is that what we do is like we have basically we do audits, like full research on, and then like really test apps to the full WCAG guidelines.
Mhm.
That's one, and two, there's the usability testing with users, and I think those two are you should do both if you want to make your user happy, because only with user testing, yeah, I think it's not the best first step, because first you should make your app technically
Yeah.
equally, that there's labels, and that the larger font size and landscape mode, that's working, that the contrast is good. First you need to do that, and if you do that well and then ask users for feedback, then you get feedback uh, that is valuable, because
Yeah.
if you ask users feedback, then they're able to give feedback if your app is really bad. But as a professional, I can give the feedback way more faster, and
Mm.
also give solutions right away. And then user research is yeah, it's quite expensive compared to a professional just making a video of the app and giving comments like while like testing the app. So yeah, what we see is uh, that it's not one solution for all the companies, but that the first step should be making your app usable and to complying to the guidelines as much as possible, and then ask users for to make the last step, and that it's also that the usability is becoming better.
Definitely. Perfect. Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And I think so there was another question I think that we've already approached, which is fine. So I'll just move on to the one of the last, probably the final question for this podcast, which I'm hoping to do in every episode, is um what do you believe is the simplest, most cost effective and convenient way that someone could implement more digital accessibility in their own workplace? So that's anyone at any level, I suppose. So it's quite difficult question, I suppose. But do you have any nuggets of advice for people?
Yeah, in our reporting app, we got like quite a lot of reports, and about 50% of them is that there's no labels.
Right.
So if you want to, it's easy, really easy to fix. So if you say, like we're at the starting point of accessibility, we didn't look at accessibility yet. Okay, put on a screen reader. It's not that complicated. Go from left to right, top to bottom to the screen. If you have any missing labels, add them.
Yeah.
This is really simple. It will take you a few hours probably, but then the screen reader at least reads out what you visually see. And then of course things can be complicated, and it can be, let's say, mixed up and difficult, but at least you hear what's under the button that you're going to press, and that's one. Um, Secondly, yeah, maybe I regret saying this later, but what we do when we start with advising companies is that I take my phone, put large font size on, put the screen reader on, and just make a screen recording, and then go from left to right, top to bottom through the screen, and say, yeah, this is a button. It's a back button. It should have the name back, because otherwise it will just announce button. Oh, this is a title. Oh, you should mark it as a title. It's 1.3.1. Oh, by the way, this is a, I don't know, tab bar. It should have a name. It's missing now, and it should state that it's the first out of 4 tabs.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks for listening. It takes me maybe 5 minutes. That's how we do consultancy. Just really like test the screen in 5 minutes, give them 10 points that they should fix, and they can be working. Maybe it's nice. Like, I don't know how many people will watch this, so that maybe I will regret this. Because if you want to make like the first step, just send me an email, or email Joe. Maybe that's better. That you can, and that I really like. Accessibility is really difficult, because it's like 50 points from the WCAG guidelines. It's so many things that can go wrong, but to make a first big step, just, yeah, it's not that easy. And I don't do this to make sales afterwards, because all solutions are Appt.org. You can do it yourself. It's even a training at academy.abra.nl. That's also for free. So there's all the steps. You can do it yourself. You can do it for free. So yeah, there's no excuse not to do any inaccessible apps anymore.
That's it.
So,
And I think there's no excuse, at least for the, like you say, the first step, and adding labels. I think that's a great thing that we can sort of take away from this is it's a fundamental thing. It's something that will make life better for a huge amount of people. Like you said, 50% of the reports on your own sort of foundation mentioned labels. So it's a small thing that can make a huge difference. So thank you. That's a great bit of advice. So I guess finally, just if you'd like to share any more information you have. I know you've mentioned Abra and Appt, the Appt Foundation. I'll be sharing the links alongside this podcast. So, but if you've got any sort of websites that you'd like to sort of mention, or anything else that you'd like people to sort of go and follow after listening this, then yeah, fire away.
yeah, I think the most important we already mentioned. Maybe it's nice to mention that on the platform Appt.org, that there are some beginner guides on how to start and how to start testing. Like those two are really, it's you can start with everything, and then you are drinking beer 5 minutes past 3. It's better to make a first step that is, let's say, easy and fun, and you see that it improves, and that you then go take it layer by layer by layer, and that you make steps in a certain direction. But the first step should be small, easy, and you should see results really fast, and that's something that we would like to trigger.
Brilliant. Perfect. Excellent. Great stuff. So like I said, I'll share links and things as well, and let people know how to get in touch with you if they want to ask you any questions, or hopefully send you some business, some business your way to help them increase their accessibility, which would be great. And I'd like to just finish with a quote that actually touches on something you said earlier in the episode, and that is, when a flower does not bloom, you fix the environment, you don't fix the flower. And that's something that you mentioned earlier, that if you take away those barriers or those doors or those blockers, then that person that's using it no longer has a disability, because it's actually the environment that's disabling people, or the application that's disabling people, rather than their own sort of abilities. So thank you so much again for all of your knowledge.
Yeah, thank you.
Everything that you're doing in the space, it's admirable, and yeah, really appreciate your time again. Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome. Bye bye. See each other soon.
Will do. Thank you.